Welcome to Cosmic Communion. So the 2212 and then the 3635 are both solar plexus connected directly to the throat. So they're both these like manifestor channels connecting the seat of our power directly to the throat. Doesn't have to go through any other centers in order to get there.
I find it just really intriguing that these two are nestled besides one another here in solar plexus season, in Pisces season. Pisces season really is such a powerful time of year to be tapping into the seeds that we're planting, how we're watering them, how we're entering into springtime, like with what energy and like what we're actually tending and bringing to life that we're going to be harvesting in the future. That seems to be something that I keep coming around to. And like even last night, I was pulling some cards for myself and I pulled the Great Work in the Alchemy deck. And one of the sentiments in that card is tend to the youngest seeds. And so like 12th house themes, Pisces themes, the seed of our power. It's like we're ahead in so many cycles in our life, and we're also still, it's the beginning and the end, right? And so what are the youngest seeds that are still very vulnerable and need a lot of energy? And how can we cultivate like the garden of our life to ensure that we protect that newest growth to come into its fruition, and also that it supports the entire ecosystem of our life. Um, and so 22 and 36 kind of being next to each other, I think is really interesting. As we're attuning to this solar plexus mutation, we're moving less from that motored energy and more into like the awareness of it. 36 then bringing in the collective. It's like where in 22 we're resting in the awareness of the power that we hold to transmute pain and suffering, that we then next up, let's look at it outside of us. So here's the artistic expression, the creative expression of how you transmute that pain into something productive that tends the garden of your life, that is like nutrient rich. It's like it's dense, it's good, it's vital. And then the mirrored reflection of that in our external reality is what 36 feels like to me. And that it's like it kind of just steps right over there. And so the shadow is turbulence. It's the gift of humanity and the city of compassion.
Yeah.
So
It's just kind of like dawning on me right now how um mirrored they are, and
yeah,
that the nature of both of them is human suffering.
yeah,
Um and the path to transmuting that suffering.
yeah. And it's like this as within, so without, right? So it feels like it's an additional opportunity to be really like grounding in those lessons from 22. Okay, like now I kind of feel my own power. I can express it. But what does that mean? Where does my expression belong in the collective? Like, where am I impacting the world outside of me? This is a huge, it's like we don't exist in a vacuum. We belong to one another. And so it's like then seeing where that experience is mirrored, that artistic expression that we feel inside of ourselves is mirrored in the external world around us and who we share that with.
Yeah, so he opens the chapter with the dark night of the soul. So that turbulence, that emotional turbulence in human design It's called the gate of crisis, the gate of emotional crisis. And on the other side of it is 35, which is progress, change.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
it requires, in order to progress and evolve and change our lives, we have to go through this emotional crisis process. If things are comfortable, then we don't change. We only are forced to change through being uncomfortable. That's something else I've been really tuning into this past week, is when discomfort and suffering arises in our life, it's really trying to catalyze movement. It's
Yes.
like it's inviting us, it's pushing us, even when it's uncomfortable, to make changes in our life that we need to make in order to evolve.
Yes.
I think people who have this channel, so like either if you're a manifesting generator or a manifester, oftentimes people that carry this channel are bringing that energy of turbulence and emotional crisis to the people around them to catalyze change and transformation and transmutation.
The keynote for collective circuitry is sharing. So there's this deep internal desire to like, okay, I'm feeling this internal confrontation and I know that I'm meant to transmute this with the world around me, which is different than the 22, which is like, okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to engage in an artistic process. I'm moody. I'm going to like sequester myself to
It's
my
very
art
internal.
studio,
Yeah.
very internal. And the 36 is like, no, you're coming along for the ride with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that 36, 35 energy I always see as involving other people.
Yeah. Yep.
And again, this is part of the stream that we spoke about when we went into 41 and 30 back in Aquarius season, which is the pressure to have a new experience so that we can evolve.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that 35, 36, it's like that emotional crisis is calling us out into the world to experience something new so we can learn something about ourselves and learn something about humanity.
Yeah.
Um, and that there is this almost like martyr quality to it,
Yeah.
you know? We talked about this a lot in 30 specifically, but sometimes like these things that we're called towards, it's really just this like evolutionary program that is moving through us so humanity can evolve, and it really doesn't have to do with us personally necessarily. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I feel like this energy, it's also like it's like an evolving of spirit. Where we in 22 we were talking about like kind of this example of Christ and paying for the world's sins. Well, this is where the world's sins are occurring, right? Like where we're really like tuned into the world's sins, the collective nature of sin. Quote, I'm using a quote there, like, what is a sin except for going against yourself?
Yes.
You know,
Dishonoring yourself.
dishonoring yourself. That is, if we're going to call anything a sin, it's that. It's
Yeah.
not what the church or organized religion has told us that it is. It is going against the nature of what we are, who we are, and how we're meant to be. And so I think often this quality of crisis is actually just
Crisis. Christ.
crisis. Right. It's really just this external reflection of where we're out of alignment in our external world with the emotional experiences we're here to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And we
absolutely.
and we have like we're, you know, this big thing in between our eyes that like creates all these stories of like how it should happen and why it should happen and like, oh, I'm being victimized. And it's like that clinging, what we learned in the 30, like that clinging truth. It's going to continue confronting you until you take action.
Mm-hmm.
That
Hmm.
truth, the truth is a clinging fire.
And the crisis is asking you to look at what is creating the crisis.
Yes.
Yeah, because crisis is just a symptom of, yeah, being out of alignment. It's the resistance that we experience when we're on a path that is not ours.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so that emotional crisis comes to show us who we are and who we're not.
There's something there too about like the experiences we want to have
Yeah.
or that we're not having.
Yeah.
And like
Because it's just, yeah.
our ownership inside of that. That's all I was going to say is just
Hmm.
like,
Well, think about it. It's just on the other side is desire, what we
yeah.
desire. That emotional crisis is thrusting us into a process so we can feel into what we actually desire for our life.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's really interesting.
I think like collective energies are specifically kind of confusing for the individual to suss out in like what is mine and what is out there, this mirror of reality outside of us. And like, I think it all begins, I think like the thing that I would consistently go back to is that it all begins within, whether it's a collective energy or an individual energy. It's like more about our own internal desires,
Yeah.
our own internal solar plexus process, and what continues to show up in our life for transmutation.
The 36th gift of humanity, spirit descending. So there, I've never read this chapter before, so I'm like, oh wow, this really is like very mirrored with 22.
Hmm. That's why I feel like they complement each other so well. There's like a simplicity there, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the only these places, whether they're activated in the chart or not, they're the
Mm-hmm.
homes of this experience that we're talking about. Like
Yep.
everybody, especially right now as the sun transits, the light is shining upon these themes, and it's a part of being a human.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is this part of being human is like having internal and external uh transmutative processes with life, like with and how we impact the world with our own differentiated expressions
Mm-hmm.
of power
Yeah.
rising up through us impacts the nature of reality,
Yeah.
is what it feels like we're reminded about here.
Mm-hmm. And the responsibility piece of that. Because
Yes.
these are the only two channels where our power center, the solar plexus, is connected directly to the throat, which is what manifests reality. There is a
Yes.
responsibility for us
Yes.
to be honest about
Oh,
what we're feeling and what is happening within us. Because otherwise, if we're just like spewing this emotional chaos, we're creating chaos not only in our own lives, but in the field around us.
yes.
Right. And so it's like
That part.
this comes
Yes.
back to I think what we were talking about with humanity, this the solar plexus being the newest center to evolve in humanity, and that it's we're still kind of emotionally immature. We're in this process of maturation with the solar plexus, and we're still learning how to use and how to wield our power responsibly.
Yep.
And so I think we see I think these two channels can be incredibly destructive
Yeah.
when there is not self awareness of the
Yeah.
impact, right? These are manifestor channels, impact. When we're not aware of the power that we hold within, and we're just like, yeah, spewing that to the people around us.
Yeah.
That's creating a lot of chaos in the field, which will then come back around to you.
Yeah. Which is now looped back to this topic in 22 of karma.
Yeah.
That is where, so this is really a place where we're like continuing to loop upon our own karmic patterns in this lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm.
It also seems like this divergence between collective karma versus our personal kind of lifetime karma, where the wires can kind of get crossed or something. Like I don't know. I don't know the full story on that one yet, but feels like something's there with that where we can like quite literally like pull it up from the unconscious realms and continue to give it power
Yes.
in the you know,
Yes.
where now that program just continues running, and that's through
Mm.
us kind of bringing the power and our voice to whatever, insert whatever karmic loop pattern or collective pattern that we're talking about. Does that like
Yeah.
did that
I
even make sense? I mean,
no,
I
I
don't
get.
think it fully makes sense, but like
No, I think it speaks to when because we're manifesting life from our subconscious beliefs about life and
yes.
about who we are.
Yes.
And so when we bring our consciousness to what is subconscious, there's that Carl Jung quote, until
It
you
is so
make
good.
the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That feels
That
so connected
that
to 36.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um
And sorry, you go
no,
ahead.
no. I
Whoa. Yes. And I mean, we've been talking about this personally between us. It's like we are at a time. We have enough information. This is like my kind of like judgmental Virgo call lately is like quit,
no,
learn
it's
how to
it's
act
it's
it.
time to grow up. Like, right?
It's
And
time.
and that's what 36 is really pointing to, is like humanity is in this collective dark night of the soul on a
Yeah.
collective level. We are in emotional crisis, right? That's
Yeah.
that's where we're at. And that emotional crisis is urging us, calling us to mature, to evolve emotionally and come into right relationship with our power. That really
Yeah.
feels like that's the call of this time, is like we're manifesting reality whether we're aware of it or not. When we bring consciousness to that process, that is how we co-create the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible, that we all want.
I love this so much.
Yeah.
36 is also, I was looking, it's also coded to the amino acid of proline.
Mm.
So there's this quality there of like structural integrity, of being vessels for grace to pour through and allow spirit to involve itself with our process. And when we are open channels to grace, the transmutative, that again, back to this 22 thing, the suffering, it's like we see past the suffering. We see like, oh, this is, we've been doing this with alongside one another this whole
We have
time.
compassion, right?
Yes, we have
That's the
compassion.
city. And so
Yes.
it's like we can have compassion for those who are suffering, compassion for those that are lost in this like emotional turbulence. And
Yeah.
that is this, it's the same thing, just a different flavor of grace. And we all have the power to extend that compassion to our fellow brothers and sisters. And that
Yeah.
force in and of itself, that force of compassion, is a transmutative force.
Yes.
And so
And
rather than judging people for, all of the emotional tornadoes that they're creating, we can have
mm,
compassion for their experience And that in and of itself is opening the door for the transmutation to happen. And
Yes.
so I think this is really connecting us back to how interpersonal the 36 is versus the 22 being more of this individual internal process. The
Yeah.
36 almost like needs the other to come and extend that compassion to them so that they can then have compassion for themselves, which is what connects them with their humanity.
Something that I'm really being pulled to that we've been talking about is, emotional manipulation
Mm,
and how prevalent that is. Like, as
yes.
women, we have learned how to kind of navigate the patriarchal world that we live in with emotional manipulation, which is a divergence from speaking, uh, so much about, like, the solar plexus is about communicating a truth that is in alignment with words and frequency. So the truth is felt. It is not only spoken, but it's felt, and we can feel when there's a misalignment and somebody
Yes.
says something to us, and we're like, that wasn't the like the full thing. And so this week we've been really kind of like unpacking emotional manipulation and
Yeah.
seeing how much we use that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's bringing up anything like to say. I feel like it's involved here.
Yeah. Well, when we're in this like turbulence, in this emotional turbulence, we unconsciously manipulate people to be in the turbulence with us.
Yeah. Get on my ride.
Yeah, like come
Get on
it,
my ride.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so this has been a huge theme in my life. My mom actually had the 3536 and
Yeah.
the 3740 and the 59/6. So like three different emotional channels going off there. And her actually 36 was her personality earth. Her sun was in 6.
Mhm.
There's something emerging here around the solar plexus really being like the heart of reality creation. And it's like people can pull you into this story and it takes you into their story, right? Into their reality. And, you know, I have a completely open solar plexus. And so this has been a huge theme in my life where, and I'm a projector. So it can be very easy for me to get lost in other people's stories because I'm absorbing that frequency.
Yeah.
And it's taken a lot of inner cultivation to be able to discern when I'm getting pulled into somebody else's story versus like what is my story. These two channels are incredibly powerful in their ability to suck you in and manipulate you into co creating that reality with them.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, there's just so much there. And I feel like really as of like this Pisces season, there I feel like I've really like graduated from like solar plexus school, and my completely open solar plexus is like really setting in as this like wisdom center. And what I'm starting to notice is that I know now when somebody else is like crying or emotionally manipulating me, I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
I'm not crying. I'm not feeling anything. I feel very like nothing. Whereas when it's a
Mhm.
genuine, like emotional expression of like a truth, then I will cry with the person
It'll
because
hit you.
it'll
Like you're
hit me because I feel the
yeah.
spirit. The spirit is what makes me cry.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
And
yep.
so that was
Oh,
really cool. Like Luna helped me see that because like we had a little conversation by the fire last week, and she was triggered by the fact that I was not reciprocating. I wasn't meeting her in the story.
you were in her experience.
I was not getting sucked into the story.
Yep.
And so then it continued to unravel. And in the past, I would have more just like yielded and been like, okay, like taken ownership of my part and then kind of like step back. But I kept provoking. That 39 kept like going in there. And then finally we got to the real truth, and that's when I started crying.
Yes. Yeah.
And that felt like
Yeah.
a huge graduation moment for me, because I've been emotionally manipulated my entire life. Since before I even took my first breath, I'm taking in the emotional energy of my mother. Both of my parents are emotional.
Yeah.
And this has just been
Yeah.
this karmic theme for me of involving myself and other people's emotional processes and thinking that I need to do something about it, thinking that I need to fix their emotions, I need to save them from their suffering. That's really
Yeah.
like the main karmic theme of my life, is like thinking that it's my responsibility to take other people's suffering away or heal them from their suffering, which is not possible.
As I was listening to you speak, that gift of humanity is where it really rests in this 35, 36, is like allowing somebody to be in that process. Like, we're learning, we're maturing as a collective. And some of the greatest growth that I've seen just in our own little community has been, you're having your process, you're doing that. It might even be an emotional manipulation, but it's human. All of it is welcome. The emotional manipulation or not,
Mm-hmm.
it's all welcome. And so like when we take the charge out of like you're wrong, you're bad, you're like making a judgment call based on what human process another is having, that really is where the compassion stems from.
Yeah.
But it's like not getting pulled. It's like, I see your humanity right now, but I'm not hopping on that story with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, exactly.
it it's that separation is illusion to a certain regard, but when it comes to your own power, being in your own power, there really is there is a differentiation there.
It was like in that experience with Luna, there was just like a neutrality that I was
Yeah.
feeling, where I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not feeling pulled,
Yeah.
right? I'm not feeling like pulled into it. I'm just feeling very neutral about like, and witnessing you. I'm bearing witness to you and your process, which is
Yes.
alchemy in and of itself.
Yes.
And then once there was something for me to say, I would say it. But
Mhm.
the programming around like meeting people and like almost validating people and their stories is so deep.
Mhm.
And I really just saw this side of me come online that was like not indulging the story for a minute, but
Yeah.
also not judging it.
Yes. Yep. Oh my gosh. I think that's it. As we're unpacking and coming into this cosmic communion project, it's like there are very true qualities, root qualities to each of these energies that we can all tap into in our own specific way that help us navigate our humanity.
Yeah.
You were talking about that too, like solar plexus being this like center of reality creation. It's the solar plexus really is such a huge thing, or such a huge center of our experience, because this is like the heart of being here in this
Mm-hmm.
human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's feeling. Like this human experience is for
Yes. Okay, that's it. That's it.
feeling and
That's
being in the emotional depth.
okay. Now, because when I said that, I was like, I don't know really why I said that about the reality creation piece, but
Yeah, that's it.
these past several months, our friend Dajé got me into Neville Goddard's work, which is all about the law of assumption. And he has
Mhm.
this book, which is all about manifestation and how manifestation actually works. And one of his books is Feeling is the Secret. The way that we manifest is through feeling. So when we want to call something into our reality, we have to feel with our whole body that we already have that thing. like feel with our whole body what it feels like to be in that reality. And that's literally what magnetizes the 3D reality to match that feeling.
Yes. There's the loop.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Oh, that is so cool. I'm gonna have to get into his work now too. 'Cause man, I ain't feeling it. I'm just pissed off. I'm just agitated this week. I'm realizing I'm starting to pick up, like, we're recording this in the end stages of 22, and I think 36 is agitating me. It's a sore spot for me for sure.
Well, remember how agitated we were when 55 came in? I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I had like a stick up my ass. I was like so agitated.
No, I remember.
Yeah. And
And
so
for no reason. Like,
no, like it literally came out of nowhere. It literally came online the second that we pressed record for 55, which was right
yeah.
before the sun actually moved into 55. And I just
Yeah.
like but also we have the Sun Saturn Cazimi today. And so that Saturnian energy is being illuminated and supported by the sun. We have Venus retrograde, we have Mercury, I think, about to station retrograde tomorrow, and then we have the South Node eclipse in Virgo tomorrow morning in 36.6. The South Node is in 6, I believe. Yeah, the South Node is in 6. The North Node is in 36.
Yeah.
I just love following the transits because it shows up so literally in my life. Like the transits are just like so literal for me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, I'm going to pay attention to this because I know that this is going to be happening. And I do like weaving it back around to attuning to and aligning to and surrendering to the transits is how we access that quantum power. It's how we open our bodies up to be vessels for power that is superhuman.
I remember when I started following transits, it was like a clusterfuck. Like I was like, what? Like, and I was trying to understand like all of the planets. And obviously, as a reflector, lunar being, I just started with the moon. Start with the moon or start with the sun. Start with something that you can really like tap into and feel. And then you'll start just noticing your energy going and looking towards like understanding the different planetary influences in your life. But I mean, especially as women, understanding the moon is so huge. So for anybody listening who's like at the beginning of that like transit process, we're here in Cosmic Communion kind of just talking about these themes of like how they're activating and like moving us through this calendar year. But there's so many different layers. And yeah, I feel like the moon is always just like the greatest place to begin because it's also fast. So you can start tracking it and really kind of feeling the tidal ebbs and flows in your life from the moon in a very like day-to-day sort of way.
Yeah.
So happy eclipse season.
Happy eclipse season. Yeah, I would love to hear from people what this eclipse season is bringing up for them, like what's ending, what's beginning, how are you feeling? So feel free to reach out to us. You can always send us a direct DM. I would love to hear. I love eclipse energy. I'm on the cross of the unexpected, so I'm just like very Uranian by nature, and I feel like eclipses always bring me abundance, even if it's South Node. Like it helps me like face the truths that I need to face and clear out that karmic density that's ready to go, so I can receive what I'm ready to receive. I love eclipse season. I love radical, unexpected change that just kind of comes out of nowhere and feels like a gift from God, like it feels like grace.
I'm literally so pissed off right now. Like I'm listening to you talk and I'm like, I don't know where it's coming from, but it's like rising up. I'm like, fuck this. But I'm happy for you. No, I'm happy for you.
I'm happy for you. I you can't see what I see. I'm like, this is working for you. This is working for you. The planets are at work for you always. If you can open up to receive what they have to offer you.
Oh yeah.
and
that's right.
release your illusion of control.
Calling me out.
Speaking generally, but also to Cody.
But also straight at my face, punch to the fucking gut.
It's okay. We're not together, so you can't punch me in the face.
Yeah. But like this really has been such a major theme of this month is receiving gifts, recognizing gifts when they're coming, like, you know, they come in all sorts of different fucking annoying packages, and are you willing to receive the gifts that life is handing to you? And I feel like that's very 36 as well.
Yeah, because otherwise it will just pass you by.
Yeah.
Right? Like some gifts will hit you in the face, but if you're not open to receiving and seeing them, then sometimes you'll miss the gift.
Yeah. And what you don't consciously accept will infiltrate the body anyway, right? Like this is an involving process. And so it's going to, what's your favorite book of John? No.
Oh yeah.
Quote.
If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, it will destroy you.
And I believe that. And
yeah.
we will experience that destruction in the many different layers of our subtle bodies. So, and that's not to be like a, you know, scare tactic or anything, but these energies will loop and they will teach us whether we're ready to receive them consciously or not.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Cosmic Communion. If you enjoyed this conversation with me and Cody, then you can find us inside Heavenly Bodies, where we dive deeper into the cosmic synthesis. This episode is brought to you by Seed Sounds Media, and we invite you to enter the Creative Crucible, a space for initiation deeper into yourself and your creative process. To learn more, you can visit seedsounds.com/memberships or click the link in the show notes.